Hey everyone, welcome back to Practical Terrain. So today I'm going to be showing you guys how to build these 100% modular shipping containers. These can be used for basically any sci-fi, modern, or post-apocalyptic game. I primarily designed it for Marvel Crisis Protocol, as you can see with Captain America here. And these, like I said, are just so reusable and make every game so fresh and unique. And I really had modularity in mind when designing these. So I'll show you, these can be moved around basically anywhere, just like building blocks or like Legos. So you can just move these around, create basically any type of terrain you want. You can make them up like bricks, or you can just stack them up haphazardly, and they still look good, and they can provide some cover if you want. Create like kind of like a corridor for miniatures to walk through, or they can provide some height so miniatures can shoot down at people down below. You can make like stairs with them, or basically endless possibilities for what you can make. So these just were really fun to make, also super easy and cheap because you just need some acrylic masking fluid to create the chips on these containers, and that's about it for special materials. Other than that, you just need some construction paper, some cereal box card or chipboard, some foam, and just some other scrap supplies that are really easy to come by and really cheap. So this project is easy and cheap, and I think the end product turned out really good. So stay tuned if you want to find out how to build these epic shipping containers. To start, I just cut some blocks from some 2-inch XPS foam. Now, you don't have to use XPS foam for this, but I did have a bunch, and it's a lot faster just to make blocks than actually put together thin sheets of foam into cubes. So this is a lot more efficient, and it saved me a bunch of time. Also, a tip to get straight cuts without a guiding straight edge on your foam is to line up two rulers and make sure they're both equally distanced on the foam so they're level, and when you run the wire along them, they'll be completely straight. Then you can just run the wire right along them and you'll get a straight cut. Alright guys, so far we've cut out the foam with the procs on, which went surprisingly well. And now that we have this all cut out, I think I made 9 of these containers so far. So now that we have this cut out, you can really see the modularity of these containers. So you can arrange them in basically any order you want. You can place miniatures anywhere. If you have enough of them, you can have all sorts of them all over the place. So the core set comes with some of these dumpsters. So these will be nice scatter terrain. That's why I'm not making quite as many of these, because the core set comes with a lot of really nice terrain as well. So I can incorporate both of these. But if you're going to make just a board out of these, you might want to make a bit more. I made 9. Anyway, so yeah, these are going to be nice. I also 3D printed some of these barrels with a new 3D printer. I think you can hear it going on in the background. And yeah, so that's pretty nice. And these came out really well, so those will be nice to play around with in the scenery. And then yeah, the core set also comes with some more terrain like cars and stuff, so that's going to be nice. So in all, this thing is going to be really sweet, I think. So I'm excited to get on to building and later painting. Next, you're going to need some corrugated paper, some magnets, some tacky glue, and later some Mod Podge. Now, one thing about magnets real quick, I did try to magnetize them, but I bought cheap Amazon magnets, as you'll later find out, and they were absolutely terrible with little to no magnetization. So the magnets did not really work out for me, but it wasn't the end of the world. The shipping containers still are very modular and they don't knock over very easily, so I wouldn't worry about that. But if you do want to magnetize them, it's a pretty good way to make them a bit more sturdy. Also, you're just going to want to put on a light layer of tacky glue, not too much, and then cut out your piece of corrugated paper or cardboard and just glue it down on there. The tacky glue doesn't dry insanely fast, but you can still keep working and it remains tacky for a while, so that's pretty nice. I just did that for every single shipping container on both sides. Now, if you are deciding to magnetize your shipping containers, I would recommend making a little template like this. So you can just line up the tip of the hot glue gun with the holes, as you see here, and just melt in the holes with the hot metal tip of the hot glue gun. Using that template will make it so the magnets line up pretty much exactly, as long as the sizing is consistent for your shipping containers. Alright, so I've put the magnets in on the top of all these shipping containers, and then the bottom of some of these, but the problem is there's some very slight variations to the size of all these different shipping containers, so these magnets don't quite line up, so you end up with like crooked stuff like that, and just doesn't line up correctly. Just because of slight variations with the template and stuff like that, so I'm gonna have to move on to a different strategy. So I thought of a couple ideas, one of them being solving my magnet problem and also solving the problem of these being a little bit too light, because they are very light and, you know, easy to knock over. So that solution was using some of these iron nails. These are just regular nails with a kind of a flat, smooth head, which is nice. Because you can take these and, okay, which one? Like this. Instead of having magnets on the bottom, just sticking these in, it gives the piece a bit more weight, and it has a bigger surface area than the magnet, so it's got a little more room for adjustment when placing these on here, and they snap in a lot easier. Now, I bought these cheap Amazon magnets, so they aren't that strong, so you can like knock it off pretty easily, but they'll do the job enough to like hold it in a bit more, maybe stop you from like knocking it over that much. So yeah, if you're gonna do this project yourself, do not buy the cheap Amazon magnets. It's like 300 magnets for like $10, but they're really not that powerful at all. So they aren't that good, but this is gonna work. So this is good. I just have a bunch of magnets and a bunch of nails and see what happens. Next, what I did to cover up the magnets and just the foam texture is I got some thin cereal box card and cut out some strips that were the same size as the shipping containers to cover up and strengthen the top and bottom. And to make the shipping container doors, I just cut out some smaller pieces of cereal box card, cutting off this about the same amount on each side, and then I just glued those on with some tacky glue. Okay guys, so I just finished putting on the doors on every single one of these shipping containers. So they're all on, and they went on pretty smoothly. I just made a template and just traced that template a bunch of times and made myself a bunch of doors, and then just kind of did an assembly line and finished all those off. So these are looking pretty good, but I did want to add some door handles to it. So I was experimenting with some singular sections of granny grating, which is this stuff. You can get it at like the sewing stores. You can take just like singular strands of this, and I'm going to use it as kind of the bars on these shipping containers. So I tried doing one on each door here, but I didn't really like the look of that. So I'm going to do like bars that fully span the width of the door, like that. And then I'm going to do bars 1, 2, 3, 4 all the way around the top. Also, they're looking good, but there's a lot of like seams and kind of unsightly pieces on the edges of all these containers. So to deal with that, I'm going to try using some construction paper and just kind of bending it over like that, in smaller sections of course, and that will fill up the seams and make a nice little like clean edge on all of these pieces. So that should be a good way to make these look a bit more cohesive and organized. Also, there's a little bit of overhang here. I just need to trim that off with the X-Acto knife, but that was left over from the template. So, got some more work to do, but I'm going to continue on, and hopefully these turn out really nice. After trimming off all the overhangs, I just cut out singular sticks of the granny grating, and I made quite a bit of these to put on all the shipping containers. After that, I broke out my paper cutter to do the cladding on all the edges to make them look cleaner. You can do this with scissors, but it's a lot harder to get straight cuts with this, and the paper cutter is just so exact and nice. It's like a Proxxon for paper. To attach the plastic strips of granny grating to act as the door handles, I just use some tacky glue and attach them. I made sure to do some sides with 3, and on the other side I would do 2, so you can match up a side with 3 with a side with 2, so they could match up more flush than if you had 3 touching each other, or 2 on the other side. And that definitely made them more stackable horizontally. Additionally, I would recommend wiping away the tacky glue, because after it was painted I noticed that there is a little bit of glue lines visible, which does look a little bit like welding, but it definitely is something you can take off. To step up the weathering of these pieces, I wanted to make a 3D rust and corrosion effect, so I just mixed some baking soda and brown paint into a thick, kind of sloppy mixture, and I just put that all over the things. It doesn't really matter what color paint you use because you're going to paint over it anyway, but I think this does add some nice texture to these pieces and breaks up the monotony of just having a bunch of flat surfaces. And in that same vein, I also added some nice dents and scratches all over the corrugations to look like some more battle damage and weathering. To finally finish off the building process of the shipping containers, I just sealed all the paper and cardboard and corrugated paper and all that fragile stuff with a watered down base coat of matte Mod Podge. This really helps strengthen it up, and after the fact these feel super strong and durable, which I really like, so I'm really glad I did this step. After that, I just took them outside and primed them black with a spray primer. Alright, so we have the shipping containers completely built. We got everything on there. I really like the look of these cladded edges with the paper. I think that really cleaned up the look. They were looking a bit disorganized and messy before, but this really cleaned it up, made them look more cohesive and official. And also this rust, I think, came out really well. It's definitely, the texture held up even through the sealing with the glue and the spray paint, which is really nice, and I think it's going to paint up really well to look like rust. And I'm also really glad I did that seal of Mod Podge, because these are really, really hard, really durable. I think these are going to be great, especially with like a matte varnish on top of these. These are going to be completely solid for gameplay anytime, anywhere. So those should be good for that. The one problem is the magnets. After all those layers of chipboard and glue and paper, there's just nothing. There's nothing there. No magnets whatsoever. So those are just gone. Remember, don't buy those Amazon magnets even though you want to. But that's about it. I mean, I'm really proud of these so far, and I think we're on a good track to get these painted up and working like I wanted them to. So it's going well. Okay, so the next step was to provide a nice base coat that I could chip away the colored base coat and leave this color beneath it. So you want a really kind of rusty brown color. Now, I made a huge mistake. Well, not a huge mistake, but a pretty big mistake when actually doing this. I did a brown base coat, which actually looked really good. Then I decided to push up the rust effects a bit more, and so I did like a watered down rust paint over the top, thinking that it would dry in kind of a nice little rusty swirls and stuff like that, kind of a random pattern. First of all, that did not work. Second of all, it was way too bright. Definitely err on the side of a darker color underneath for your chipping, because it just looks so much better than having a bright color. Bright color it honestly looks weird. I would just stick with either the color I used here, and you could even do a little bit of rust color streaks with the airbrush as well if you have one. The next step was to apply the chipping medium. So some chipping mediums work where you put on a smooth base coat of it all over the piece before you actually paint on your bright color that you want to chip away. Then afterward you just make the random chips that way by rubbing on some water or scratch away the paint. But how this works, this acrylic masking fluid, is you'd actually dab on it in the shape of the chips you want. Then you actually just go around and peel off those specific chips afterward, revealing the thing underneath. So it's kind of like masking tape in liquid form. So that's what I did. I went around making sure to get kind of random chipping effects all around and hitting all the edges and corners to make them look really weathered. And that seemed to work pretty well. Finally, it was time to put on the actual colors for the shipping containers I was going to use. I just chose some bright colors, green, blue, red, and yellow. And I wanted to base coat them with the airbrush, and that worked okay, but it was a lot of straight airbrushing, and the airbrush was getting clogged, so it was kind of a nightmare. And the craft paint did not cover well at all, so you can use expensive miniature paints on it if you want. It might take a bit of paint, but that might be faster. Or you could try painting it with a brush. I'm really not sure what would work best here, but you can try what you want. Next, I moved on to putting on some lettering using a homemade mask I made, just cutting out some letters out of cardboard, and I just put that on top, made sure to tape it down so it didn't move at all when I was blowing it with airbrush. Unfortunately, the airbrush kind of bleeds out a lot when you use it on the corrugated cardboard or chipboard or whatever you're using. So I found, and also Jeremy from Black Magic Craft, he also recommends this in his video on shipping containers. Spray paint, if you do it very lightly, is a lot better than airbrushing, and especially if you have the acrylic masking medium. That means that you don't have to worry about trying to like rub it off, the thicker spray paint, because it's just like a masking tape. You can just peel it off. So definitely use spray paint if you're using that material. After fixing some of the paint bleed on the letters, it was finally time to peel off the masking fluid. Now, this was dry now, and you could just pull it off pretty easily with your nail or with like a mechanical pencil tip. And this was a really satisfying process and took a while, but was very rewarding in the end. after that, I simply put on a homemade brown wash that I mixed up just for this project, and this really took down the vibrancy of all these colors and made them look a lot more grimdark and grimy. The last and final step in the weathering process was to use some Army Painter rust paint to make some rust streaks coming out of all the chips. I didn't do this on the top or bottom because obviously the rust wouldn't streak down, but on the sides I tried to focus it toward the larger chips. Alright everyone, so that is it for this project. I'm really happy. I'm actually very pleased with how these turned out. Even though the magnets didn't work, I still think this was a successful project, and these still are nice and stackable. The magnets probably wouldn't have helped that much anyway. Yeah, so I think the weathering looks good, everything looks pretty good. There were some other minor problems, but I think in the end it worked out really nicely. And these are going to be so fun to play with when I finally start playing Marvel Crisis Protocol and 40K and stuff like that. So I hope you enjoyed the video as much as I enjoyed making these terrain, and I hope that you go down in the comments, write me anything I can improve on, anything you liked. That's really helpful. I've gotten so many nice comments recently. Also, while you're down there, might as well subscribe and like the video if you liked it. So yeah, that's about it for today. Stay tuned for more videos on the channel. I'm thinking about dabbling in Dungeons and Dragons terrain and stuff like that, so stay tuned for that. So thank you guys for watching so much, and I'll see you guys next time.